Chapter 54. Be a communitarian. We've placed a lot of emphasis in this country on the idea of people's rights. That's how it should be. But it makes no sense to talk about rights without also talking about responsibilities. Rights have to come from somewhere, and they come from community. In return, all of us have a responsibility to the community. Some people call this the communitarian movement, but I call it common sense. This idea has been lost on a lot of us, and in my 20 years as a professor, I've noticed more and more students just don't get it. The notion that rights come with responsibilities is literally a strange concept to them. I'd ask students to sign an agreement at the start of each semester, outlining their responsibilities and rights. They had to agree to work constructively in groups, to attend certain meetings, to help their peers by giving honest feedback. In return, they had the right to be in class and to have their work critiqued and displayed. Some students balked at my agreement. I think it's because we as adults aren't always great role models about being communitarians. For example, we all believe we have a right to a jury trial, and yet many people go to great lengths to get out of jury duty. So, I wanted my students to know everyone has to contribute to the common good. To not do so can be described in one word: selfish. My dad taught this to us by example, but he also looked for novel ways to teach it to others. He did something very clever when he was a Little League baseball commissioner. He had been having trouble rounding up volunteer umpires. It was a thankless job, in part because every time you called a strike or a ball, some kid or parent was sure you got it wrong. There was also the issue of fear. You had to stand there while kids with little or no control flailed their bats and threw wild pitches at you. Anyway, my dad came up with an idea. Instead of getting adults to volunteer, he had the players from the older age division serve as umpires for the younger kids. He made it an honor to be selected as an umpire, and several things happened as a result of this. The kids who became umpires understood how hard a job it was and hardly ever argued with umpires again. They also felt good that they were lending a hand to kids in the younger divisions. Meanwhile, the younger kids saw older kid role models who were embracing volunteering. My dad had created a new set of communitarians. He knew when we're connected to others, we become better people. Chapter 55. Chapter 55. All you have to do is ask. On my dad's last trip to Disney World, he and I were waiting for a monorail with Dylan, who was then 4 years old. Dylan had this urge to sit in the vehicle's cool-looking nose cone with the driver. My theme park-loving father thought that would be a huge kick, too. Too bad they don't let regular people sit up there, he said. I said. Actually, Dad, having been an Imagineer, I've learned that there's a trick to getting to sit up front. Do you want to see it? He said, sure. So I walked over to the smiling Disney monorail attendant and said, excuse me, could the three of us please sit in the front car? Certainly, sir, the attendant said. He opened the gate and we took our seat beside the driver. It was one of the only times in my life I ever saw my dad completely flabbergasted. I said there was a trick, I told him as we sped towards the Magic Kingdom. I didn't say it was a hard trick. Sometimes all you have to do is ask. I've always been fairly adept at asking for things. I'm proud of the time I got up my courage and contacted Fred Brooks Jr., one of the most highly regarded computer scientists in the world. After beginning his career at IBM in the 50s, he went on to found the computer science department at the University of North Carolina. He is famous in our industry for saying, among other great things, adding manpower to a late software project makes it later. This is now known as the Brooks Law. I was in my late 20s and still hadn't met the man, so I emailed him asking, if I drive down from Virginia to North Carolina, would it be possible to get 30 minutes of your time and talk? He responded, if you drive all the way down here, I'll give you more than 30 minutes. He gave me 90 minutes and became a lifelong mentor to me. Years later, he invited me to give a lecture at the University of North Carolina. That was the trip that led to the most seminal moment in my life, when I met Jay. Sometimes all you have to do is ask, and it can lead to all your dreams coming true. These days, given my short road ahead, I've gotten even better at just asking. As we all know, it often takes days to get medical results. Waiting around for medical news is not how I want to spend my time lately. So I always ask, what's the fastest I can get these results? Oh, they often respond, we might be able to have it for you within an hour. Okay then, I say, I'm glad I asked. Ask those questions, just ask them. More often than you'd suspect, the answer you'll get is sure. Chapter 56. Make a decision. Tigger or Eeyore? When I told Carnegie Mellon's president, Jared Cohen, that I would be giving a last lecture, he said, please tell them about having fun, because that's what I will remember you for. And I said, I can do that, but it's kind of like a fish talking about the importance of water. I mean, I don't know how not to have fun. I'm dying and I'm having fun, and I'm going to keep having fun every day I have left, because there is just no other way to play it. I came to the realization about this very early in my life. As I see it, there's a decision we all have to make, and it seems perfectly captured in the Winnie the Pooh characters by A.A. Milne. Each of us must decide, am I a fun-loving Tigger, or am I a sad sack Eeyore? Pick a camp. I think it's clear where I stand on the great Tigger-Eeyore debate. For my last Halloween, I had great fun. Jay and I dressed up as the Incredibles, and so did our 3 kids. I put a photo of us on the website letting everyone know what an incredible family we were. The kids look pretty super. I look invincible in my fake cartoon muscles, and I explained that chemo had not drastically altered my superpowers, and I got tons of smiling emails in response. I recently went on a short scuba diving vacation with 3 of my best friends. My high school friend Jack Sheriff, my college roommate Scott Sherman, and my friend from electronic arts Steve Siebold. We were all aware of the subtext. These were my friends from various times in my life, and they were banded together to give me my farewell weekend. My 3 friends didn't know each other very well, but strong bonds formed quickly. All of us are grown men, but for much of the vacation, it was as if we were all 13 years old, and we were all Tiggers. We successfully avoided any emotional, I love you, man, dialogue related to my cancer. Instead, we just had fun. We reminisced, we horsed around, and we made fun of each other. Actually, it was mostly them making fun of me for the St. Randy of Pittsburgh reputation that I had gotten since my last lecture. They know me, and they were all having none of it. I won't let go of the Tigger inside of me. I just can't see the upside of becoming Eeyore. Someone asked me what I want to be on my tombstone. I replied, Randy Pausch. He lived 30 years after a terminal diagnosis. I promise you, I could pack a lot of fun into those 30 years. But if it's not to be, then I'll just pack fun into whatever time I do have. Chapter 57. A way to understand optimism. After I learned I had cancer, one of my doctors gave me some advice. It's important, he said, to behave as if you're going to be around for a while. I was already way ahead of him. Doc, I just bought a new convertible, and I got a vasectomy. What more do you want from me? Look, I'm not into denial about my situation. I am maintaining a clear-eyed sense of the inevitable. I'm living like I'm dying, but at the same time, I am very much living like I'm still living. Some oncologist office will schedule appointments for patients 6 months out. For the patients, it's an incredibly optimistic signal that the doctors expect them to live. There are terminally ill people who look at the doctor's appointment cards on their bulletin boards and say to themselves, I'm going to make it to that, and when I get there, I'm going to get good news. Herbert Zach, my surgeon in Pittsburgh, said he worries about patients who are inappropriately optimistic or ill-informed. At the same time, he is upset when patients are told by friends and acquaintances that they have to be optimistic or their treatments won't work. And it pains him to see patients who are having a tough day health-wise and assume it's because they weren't positive enough. My personal take on optimism is that it's a mental state. It can enable you to do tangible things to improve your physical state. If you're optimistic, you are better able to endure brutal chemo or keep searching for late-breaking medical treatments. Dr. Zeg calls me his poster boy for the healthy balance between optimism and realism. He sees me trying to embrace my cancer as another life experience. But I love that my vasectomy doubled as both appropriate birth control and an optimistic gesture about my future. I love driving around in my new convertible. I love thinking I might find a way to become the 1 in a million guy who beats this late-stage cancer. But because even if I don't, it's better mindset to help me get through each day. Chapter 58. The input of others. Since my last lecture began spreading out on the internet, I've been hearing from so many people I've known over the years, from childhood neighbors to long ago acquaintances, and I'm grateful for their warm words and thoughts. It has been a delight to read notes from former students and colleagues. One coworker recalled advice I gave him when he was a non-tenured faculty member. He said I had warned him to pay attention to any and all comments made by department chairs. He remembers me telling him, when the chair casually suggests that perhaps you might consider doing something, you should visualize a little cattle prod. A former student emailed me to say I had helped inspire him to create a new personal development website called Stop Sucking and Live a Life of Abundance, designed to help people who are living far below their potential. That sounded sort of like my philosophy, though certainly not my exact words. And just to keep things in perspective, from the Some Things Never Change department, an unrequited crush from high school wrote to wish me well and gently reminded me why I was way too nerdy for her back then, also letting slip that she had gone on to marry a real doctor. More seriously, thousands of strangers have written to me, and I've been buoyed by their good wishes. Many shared advice on how they and their loved ones have coped with matters of death and dying. A woman who lost her 48-year-old husband to pancreatic cancer said his last speech was to a small audience, her, his children, his parents, and his siblings. He thanked them for their guidance and love, reminisced about the places he had gone with them, and told them what had mattered most to him in life. The woman said counseling had helped her family after her husband died. Knowing what I know now, Mrs. Posh and your children will have a need to talk, cry, and remember. Another woman whose husband died of a brain tumor when their children were ages 3 and 8 offered insights for me to pass along to Jay. You can survive the unimaginable, she wrote. Your children will be a tremendous source of comfort and love, and they will be the best reason to wake up every morning. and smile. She went on. Take the help that's offered while She went on. Take the help that's offered while Randy lives so you can enjoy your time with him. Take the help that's offered when he is no longer here so you can have the strength for what's important. Join others who have this kind of loss. They will be a comfort for you and your children. This woman suggested Jay reassure our kids as they get older that they will have a normal life. There will be graduations, marriages, and children of their own. When a parent dies at such an early age, some children think of other normal life cycles that may not be happening for them either. I heard from a man in his early 40s with serious heart problems. He wrote to tell me about Krishnamurti, a spiritual leader in India who had died in 1986. Krishnamurti was once asked, what is the most appropriate thing to say to a friend who was about to die? He answered, tell your friend that in his death, a part of you dies and goes with him. Please excuse the temporary pause in this. This brings up a lot of emotions for me because of a number of losses that I've had in my life. He answered, tell your friend that in his death a part of you dies and goes with him. Wherever he goes, you also go. He will not be alone. In his email to me, this man was reassuring, I know you are not alone. I've also been moved by comments and good wishes from some well-known people who got in touch as a result of the lecture. For instance, TV news anchor Diane Sawyer interviewed me, and when the cameras were off, helped me think more clearly about the touchstones I'll be leaving for my kids. And she gave me an incredible piece of advice. I knew I was going to leave my kids letters and videos, but she told me the most crucial thing is to tell them the specific idiosyncratic ways in which I related to them. And so I've been thinking a lot about that. I decided to tell each of my kids things like, I love the way you tilt your head back when you laugh. I will give them specific stuff that they can grasp. And Dr. Reese, the counselor Jay and I see, has helped me find strategies to avoid losing myself in the stress of my periodic cancer scans, so I'm able to focus on my family with an open heart, a positive outlook, and most of all, my attention. I had spent much of my life doubting the effectiveness of counseling. Now, with my back against the wall, I see how hugely helpful it can be. I wish I could travel through oncology wards telling this to patients who are trying to rough it and tough it out on their own. Many, many people have written to me about matters of faith. I've so appreciated their comments and their prayers. I was raised by parents who believe faith is something very personal. I didn't discuss my specific religion in my lecture because I wanted to talk about universal principles that apply to all faiths, to share things I had learned through my relationships with people. Some of those relationships, of course, I have found at church. M.R. Kelsey, a woman from our church, came and sat with me at the hospital every day for 11 days after my surgery. And since my diagnosis, my minister has been very helpful. We belong to the same swimming pool in Pittsburgh, and the day after I'd learned my condition was terminal, we were both there. He was sitting by the pool, and I had climbed up on the diving board. I winked at him and then did a flip off the board. When I got to the side of the pool, he said to me, "You seem to be the picture of good health, Randy." I told him, "That's the cognitive dissonance. I feel good and look great, but we heard yesterday that my cancer is back and the doctors say I only have 3 to 6 months." He and I have since talked about the ways I might best prepare for death. "You have life insurance, right?" he said. "Yes, it's all in place," I told him. "Well, you also need emotional insurance," he said. And then he explained that the premiums of emotional insurance would be paid for with my time, not my money. To that end, he suggested that I needed to spend hours making videotapes of myself with the kids so that they will have a record of how we played and laughed. Years from now, they will be able to see the ease with which we touched each other and interacted. He also gave me his thoughts on specific things I could do for Jay to leave her a record of my love. If you cover the premiums on your emotional insurance now, while you're feeling okay, there will be less weighing on you in the months ahead. He said, you'll be more at peace. My friends, my loved ones, my minister, total strangers. Every single day I receive input from people who wish me well and boost my spirits. I have truly gotten to see examples of the best in humanity, and I am so grateful for that. I've never felt alone on this ride I'm taking. Final remarks. Chapter 59, Dreams for My Children. There are so many things I want to tell my children, and right now they're too young to understand. Dylan just turned 6, Logan is 3, Chloe is 18 months old. I want the kids to know who I am and what I've always believed in, and all the ways in which I've come to love them. Given their ages, so much of this would be over their heads. I wish the kids could understand how desperately I don't want to leave them. Jay and I haven't even told them that I'm dying. We've been advised that we should wait until I am more symptomatic. Right now, though, I've been given just months to live, and I still look pretty healthy. And so my kids remain unaware that in my every encounter with them, I am saying goodbye. It pains me to think that when they're older, they won't have a father. When I cry in the shower, I'm not usually thinking, I won't get to see them do this, I won't get to see them do that. I'm thinking about the kids not having a father. I'm focused more about what they're going to lose than what I'm going to lose. Yes, a percentage of my sadness is, I won't, but a bigger part of me grieves for them. I keep thinking, they won't. And that chews me up inside when I let it. I know their memories of me may be fuzzy. That's why I'm trying to do things with them that they will find unforgettable. I want their recollections to be as sharp as possible. Dylan and I went on a mini vacation and swam with dolphins. A kid swims with dolphins. He doesn't easily forget it. We took lots of photos. I'm going to bring Logan to Disney World, a place I know he'll love as much as I do. He'd like to meet Mickey Mouse. I've met him, so I can make the introduction. Jay and I will bring Dylan along as well, since every experience Logan has these days doesn't seem complete unless he's engaged in the action with his big brother. Every night at bedtime, when I ask Logan to tell me the best part of his day, he always answers, playing with Dylan. When I ask him for the worst part of his day, he also answers, playing with Dylan. Suffice it to say, they're bonded as brothers. I'm aware that Chloe may have no memory of me at all. She's too young. But I want her to grow up knowing that I was the first man to ever fall in love with her. I'd always thought the father-daughter thing was overrated, but I can tell you it's real. Sometimes she looks at me and I just become a puddle. There are so many things Jay will be able to tell them about me once they're older. She might talk about my optimism, the way I embraced having fun, and the high standards I try to set in my life. She may diplomatically tell them some of the things that made me exasperating, my overly analytic approach to life, my insistence, too often, that I knew best. But she's modest, much more modest than me, and she might not tell the kids this, that in our marriage, she had a guy who really, deeply, truly loved her, and she won't tell them all the sacrifices she made. Any mother of 3 children is consumed with taking care of them. Throw in a cancer-stricken husband, and the result is a woman who is always dealing with someone else's needs, not her own. I want my kids to know how selfless she was in caring for all of us. Lately, I've been making a point of speaking to people who lost parents when they were very young. I want to know what got them through the hard times and what keepsakes have been most meaningful to them. They told me they found it consoling to learn about how much their mothers and fathers loved them. The more they knew, the more they could still feel the parents' love. They also wanted reasons to be proud. They wanted to believe that their parents were incredible people. Some of them sought specifics on their parents' accomplishments. Some chose to build myths, but all had yearnings to know what made their parents special. These people told me something else, too. Since they have so few of their own memories of their parents, they found it reassuring to know that their parents died with great memories of them. To that end, I want my kids to know that my memories of them fill my head. Let's start with Dylan. I admire how loving and empathetic he is. If another child is hurt, Dylan will bring over a toy or blanket. Another trait I see in Dylan, he's analytical like his old man. He's already figured out that the questions are more important than the answers. A lot of kids ask, why? One rule at our house is that you may not ask one-word questions, and Dylan embraces that idea. He loves to formulate full-sentence questions, and his inquisitiveness goes beyond his years. I remember his preschool teachers raving about him, telling us, when you're with Dylan, you find yourself thinking, I want to see what kind of an adult this kid turns into. Dylan is also king of curiosity. Wherever he is, he's looking somewhere else and thinking, hey, there's something over there. Let's go look at it or touch it or take it apart. If there's a white picket fence, some kids will take a stick to it and walk along listening to the thwack, thwack, thwack. Dylan would go one better. He'd use the stick to pry one of the pickets loose, and then he'd use the picket to do the thwacking thing because it's thicker and sounds better. For his part, Logan makes everything an adventure. When he was born, he got stuck in the birth canal. It took 2 doctors pulling with forceps to bring him out into the world. I remember one of the doctors, his foot on the table, pulling with all his might. At one point, the doctor turned to me and said, I've got chains and Clydesdales in the back if this doesn't work. It was a tough passage for Logan. Given how cramped he was for so long in the birth canal, his arms weren't moving just after he was born. Jay and I were worried, but not for long. Once he started moving, he really has never stopped. He just is this phenomenal ball of positive energy, completely physical and gregarious. And when he smiles with his whole face. He is the ultimate Tigger. He's also a kid who is up for anything and befriends everyone. He's only 3 years old, but I'm predicting he will be the social chair of his college fraternity. Chloe, meanwhile, is all girl. I say that with a bit of awe because until she came along, I couldn't fathom what that meant. She was scheduled to be a C-section baby, but Jay's water broke, and not long after that we got to the hospital, and Chloe just slipped out. That's my description. Jay might say slipped out is a phrase only a man would come up with. Anyway, for me, holding Chloe for the first time, looking into this tiny girl's face, well, it was one of the most intense spiritual moments of my life. There was this connection I felt, and it was different from the one I had with the boys. I am now a member of the Wrapped Around My Daughter's Finger Club. I love watching Chloe. Unlike Dylan and Logan, who are always so physically daring, Chloe is careful, maybe even dainty. We have a safety gate at the top of our staircase, but she doesn't really even need it because all of her efforts go into not getting hurt. Having grown accustomed to 2 boys who rumble their way down any staircase, fearing no danger, this is a new experience for Jay and me. I love all 3 of my kids completely and differently, and I want them to know that I will love them for as long as they live. I will. Given my limited time, though, I've had to think about how I might reinforce my bonds with them. I had to think about how I might be building separate lists of memories for each of the kids. I'm making videos so that they can see me talking about what they've meant to me. I'm writing letters to them. I also see the video of my last lecture, and this book, too, as pieces of myself that I can leave for them. I even have a large plastic bin filled with mail I received in the weeks after the lecture. Someday, the kids might want to look through the bin, and my hope is that they will be pleased to find both friends and strangers who found my talk meaningful. Because I've been so vocal about the power of childhood dreams, some people have lately been asking about the dreams I have for my children. I have a direct answer for that. It can be a very disruptive thing for parents to have specific dreams for their kids. As a professor, I've seen many unhappy college freshmen picking majors that are all wrong for them. Their parents have put them on the train, and too often, judging by the crying during my office hours, the results are a total train wreck. As I see it, a parent's job is to encourage kids to develop a joy for life and a great urge to follow their own dreams. The best we can do is help them develop a personal set of tools for the task. So my dreams for my kids are very exact. I want them to find their own path to fulfillment. And given that I won't be there, I want to make this clear. Kids, don't try to figure out what I wanted you to become. I want you to become what you want to become. Having seen so many students go through my classrooms, I've come to know that a lot of parents don't realize the power of their words. Depending on a child's age and sense of self, an offhand comment from mom or dad can feel like a shove from a bulldozer. I'm not even sure I should have made the reference to Logan growing up to be a social chair of a fraternity. I don't want him to end up in college thinking that I expected him to join a fraternity or to be a leader there or anything. His life will be his life. I would just urge my kids to find their way with enthusiasm and passion, and I want them to feel as if I'm there with them, whatever path they choose. Jay and Me, Chapter 60. As any family dealing with cancer knows, caregivers are often pushed to the sidelines. Patients get to focus on themselves. They are the object of adoration and sympathy. Caregivers do the heavy lifting with little time to deal with their own pain and grief. My wife, Jay, is a cancer caregiver with even more on her plate, 3 little kids. So as I prepared to give my last lecture, I made a decision. If this talk was to be my moment, I wanted some way to show everyone how much I love and appreciate her. It happened like this. Near the end of the lecture, as I reviewed the lessons I'd learned in my life, I mentioned how vital it is to focus on other people and not just yourself. Looking off stage, I asked, "Do we have a concrete example of focusing on somebody else over there? Could we bring it out?" Because the day before had been Jay's birthday, I arranged to have a large birthday cake with a single candle waiting on a rolling table off stage. As the cake was wheeled out by Jay's friend, Clea Schroeder, I explained to the audience that I hadn't given Jay a proper birthday and thought it might be nice if I could get 400 people to sing for her. They applauded the idea and began singing, "Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you." Realizing some might not know her name, I quickly added, "Her name is Jay." Happy birthday, dear Jay. It was so wonderful. Even people in the nearby overflow room watching the lecture on the video screen were singing. As we all sang, I finally allowed myself to look at Jay. She sat in her front row seat, wiping away tears with this surprised smile on her face, looking so lovely, bashful and beautiful, pleased and overwhelmed. There are so many things Jay and I are discussing as we work to come to terms with what her life will be like after I'm gone. Lucky is a strange word used to describe my situation, but a part of me does feel fortunate that I didn't get hit by the proverbial bus. Cancer has given me time to have these vital conversations with Jay that wouldn't be possible if my fate were a heart attack or a car accident. What are we talking about? For starters, we both try to remember that some of the best caregiving advice we've ever heard comes from flight attendants. Put your own oxygen mask on before assisting others. Jay is such a giver that she often forgets to take care of herself. When we become physically or emotionally run down, we can't help anybody else, least of all small children. So there's nothing weak or selfish about taking some fraction of your day to be alone, recharging your batteries. In my experience as a parent, I've found it hard to recharge in the presence of small children. Jay knows that she'll have to give herself permission to make herself a priority. I've also reminded her that she's going to make mistakes and to just accept that. If I were able to live, we'd be making those mistakes together. Mistakes are part of the process of parenting, and she shouldn't attribute them all to the fact that she'll be raising the kids herself. Some single parents fall into the trap of trying to compensate by giving kids material things. Jay knows no material possessions can make up for a missing parent, and they can actually do harm in establishing a kid's values. It's possible that Jay, like many parents, will find some of the most challenging years to be when the kids become teenagers. Having been around students all my life, I'd like to think I would come into my own as a father of teens. I'd be tough, but I'd understand the mindset. So I'm sorry I won't be there to help Jay when the time comes. The good news, though, is that other people, friends and family, will also want to help, and Jay plans to let them. All children need a fabric of people in their lives who love them, and that's especially true for kids who've lost a parent. I think back to my own parents. They knew they couldn't be the only crucial influences in my life. That's why my dad signed me up to play football with Jim Graham, and Jay will be on the lookout for some Coach Graham for our kids. As for the obvious question, well, here's my answer. Most of all, I want Jay to be happy in the years ahead. So if she finds happiness through remarriage, that will be great. If she finds happiness without remarrying, that will also be great. Jay and I work hard at our marriage. We've gotten so much better at communicating, at sensing each other's needs and strengths, and at finding more things to love about each other. So it saddens us that we won't get to experience this richness in our marriage over the next 30 or 40 years. We won't get to amortize the hard efforts we've put in so far. Still, we wouldn't even trade our 8 years of marriage for anything. I know that, so far, I've been handling my diagnosis pretty well. Jay has too. As she says, no one needs to cry for me, and she means it. But we want to be honest too. Through counseling has helped tremendously. We've had some rough times. We've cried together in bed, fallen back to sleep, woken up, cried some more. We've gotten through it in part by focusing on the tasks at hand. We can't fall to pieces. We've got to get some sleep, because one of us has to get up in the morning and give the kids breakfast. That person, for the record, is almost always Jay. I recently celebrated my 47th birthday, and Jay had to wrestle with the question, what do you get the man you love for his last birthday? She opted for a watch and a big screen TV. Though I'm not a fan of TV, it's mankind's greatest time waster. The gift was completely appropriate since I will be in bed so much at the end. TV will be one of my last links to the outside world. There are days when Jay tells me, and there's little I can say in response. She tells me things like, I can't imagine rolling over in bed and you're not there. And I can't picture myself taking the kids on vacation and you not being with us. And Randy, you're always the planner. Who's going to make the plans? I'm not worried. Jay will make the plans just fine. I really had no idea what I would do or say after the audience sang happy birthday to Jay. But as I urged her onto the stage and she came towards me, a natural impulse overtook me. Her too, I guess. We embraced and we kissed, first on the lips, and then I kissed her cheek. The crowd kept applauding. We heard them, but it was like they were miles away. As we held each other, Jay whispered something in my ear. Please, don't die. It sounds like a Hollywood dialogue, but that's what she said, and I hugged her more tightly. Chapter 61. The dreams will come to you. For days, I had worried that I'd be unable to get through the final lines of my lecture without choking up, so I had a contingency plan. I placed the last few sentences of the talk on 4 slides. If, in the moment on stage, I couldn't bring myself to say the words, my plan was to click silently through the slides and then simply say, "Thank you for coming today." I had been on stage for just over an hour. Given the chemo side effects, a long stretch on my feet, and the emotions involved, I was truly feeling spent. At the same time, I felt at peace and fulfilled. My life had come full circle. I had first made that list of my childhood dreams when I was 8 years old. Now, 38 years later, that very list has helped me say what I needed to say and carried me through. Many cancer patients say their illness gives them a new and deeper appreciation for life. Some even say that they are grateful for the disease. I have no such gratitude for my cancer, although I'm certainly grateful for having advance notice of my death. In addition to allowing me to prepare my family for the future, it gave me the chance to go to Carnegie Mellon and give my last lecture. And in a sense, it allowed me to leave the field under my own power. And my list of childhood dreams had continued to serve so many purposes. Without it, who knows if I would have been able to thank all of the people who deserve my thanks. Ultimately, that little list had allowed me to say goodbye to those who meant so much to me. There's something else. As a high-tech guy, I never fully understood the artists and actors I've known and taught over the years. They would sometimes talk about the things inside them that need to come out. I thought that sounded self-indulgent. I should have been more empathetic. My hour on stage had taught me something. At least I was still learning. I did have things inside me that desperately needed to come out. I didn't give the last lecture because I wanted to. I gave the lecture because I had to. I also knew why my closing lines would be so emotional for me. It was because the end of the talk had to be a distillation of how I felt about the end of my life. As I wound down, I had taken a minute to review some of the key points of the lecture, and then I offered a summation with a twist, a surprise ending, if you will. So, today's talk was about achieving childhood dreams, I said. But did you figure out the head fake? I paused. The room was quiet. It's not about how you achieve your dreams. It's about how to lead your life. If you lead your life in a right way, the karma will take care of itself. The dreams will come to you. I clicked to the next slide, and a question filled the large screen. Have you figured out the second head fake? I took a deep breath. I decided to speak at a slightly faster clip than I had before. Maybe if I just talked faster, I thought I could get through it. I repeated the words on the screen. Have you figured out the second head fake? Then I told them. The talk wasn't just for those in the room. It was for my kids. I clicked to the very last slide, a photo of me standing by our swing set, holding a smiling Logan with my right arm and a sweet Chloe with my left, Dylan sitting happily on my shoulders. Acknowledgments. My great thanks to Bob Miller, David Black, and Gary Morris. I wish to especially thank our editor, Will Balit, for his great kindness and integrity throughout, and Jeffrey Zaslow for his incredible talent and professionalism. The full set of people I must thank will not fit on this page. Fortunately, web pages scroll. Please visit www.thelastlecture.com for a full list of acknowledgments and attributions. Video of my last lecture can also be viewed from that site. My life will be lost to pancreatic cancer. Two organizations I have worked with that are dedicated to fighting this disease are the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network and the Lustgarten Foundation. Well, that's the end of this amazing man's beautiful story. I hope some of his wisdom that I've read here will be serving you in the days to come for whatever reason. I felt called to read this book as my first Thursday night sharing with you all. I will put a link to the website that he mentioned there at the end below this video in case any of you who haven't seen the last lecture would like to view it. I'm not sure what the next book will be as we're already getting into February now, so it might have to be a short one. I'm not sure how long winter is going to last here, but thanks for joining me by the wood stove. See you in the next video. Till then.